The Eagles, to me, are quarterback driven. The 49ers are, in terms of just their quarterback play, the 49ers are coach driven, right? Like if you said to the 49ers, Shanahan or Purdy, you get one for the next 15 years. Which one you want?
Brock's been nice knowing you.
And if you said to the Eagles, Sirianni or Jalen Hurts the next 15 years, which one you want?
Nick, it's been real, buddy.
Shane Steichen, come on down.
Yeah.
So, which honestly, he calls their plays. You and I were texting today. Like, if the Eagles were to lose this game, and I saw one of their reporters, Ruben Frank, said he thinks Shane Steichen, the offensive coordinator, is going to be the Panthers' next coach. If the Eagles were to lose this game, let's say there was like some clock mismanagement, Sirianni, would it be crazy for them to say, you know what, let's go with the OC as our head coach because he is the one that makes our quarterback better? Because if we lose him, we can't go back to our coach. Their coach mysteriously lost play calling duties last year. Nobody knows when exactly. That's a weird situation.
Yeah. From the quarterback in a vacuum, there is no comparison. Jalen is one of the most dynamic players in the league, right? He throws one of the best. He throws now one of the top deep balls in the league with Russell Wilson being washed. And their passing game, I mean, they have two receivers who dominate.
Two number ones.
And then his running ability is the former scout in me. I thought he was a terrible college player as a passer. I'm like, well, he's an elite runner. He could play running back. And that was like, everyone agreed. You know, when Polian was like, move him to wide receiver. But when you said that about Jalen Hurts, people were like, yeah, he can't throw. Because if you watched him in Oklahoma, he couldn't throw. You see there's a battle right now with Oklahoma and Alabama. Alabama's trying to claim him, and OU's like, you do not get to claim him. You guys benched him. He sucked with you. He comes to Lincoln. He resurrects his career. I do kind of understand where they're coming from.
I'm with Oklahoma on that.
I agree. But if
you got divorced, that's not your husband or your wife anymore.
No.
It's husband, wife number two. It's their husband or wife.
Where they do have some similarities, one guy went in the second round. The other guy was picked 262. I think Jalen, for a guy going in the second round, you would have found a ton of people that would have said, I never would have drafted him. I did not believe he would be an NFL quarterback. Now, did he win the Heisman, or he was right there in the Heisman trophy mix?
I think he won the Heisman.
Yeah, so
no,
I don't think
Lincoln doesn't have 3 Heisman winners. Or no, he does now. He doesn't have 4.
But he almost did. He was in the mix. He was having a fantastic season. And, Purdy, they do depend on him running. At least, the Giants game was hard to tell. I know he had a running touchdown, but like early in the game, he hit the ground. And one thing they said on TV is like, they're probably telling him, do not be careful. You don't want to take unneeded shots. But when he runs, he's fantastic at it. Purdy, to me, is more, I know Kyle called a quarterback draw run play for him, which honestly, if you have it schemed up, like this is, I saw a lot of people like, why would you do that? Well, clearly because when they're in the office and they're watching Dallas's defense, they thought he would go wider. Like, I trust them to scheme fucking run plays. I'm not against that.
I don't hate an occasional QB draw when the quarterback is semi-mobile, which he is. I'm with you.
But the QB draw was also based on like they motioned him out and they thought they would get a look. Like it wasn't just a random like run Purdy. It was they moved some guys and 27 covered some ground and Purdy didn't get very far. But I think they both benefit. Like
setting up the RPO he's going to run this week.
Here's the thing I would say about Jalen. He got a lot better when they not inherited. I mean, they made a trade for one of the best wide receivers in the league, who happens to be like his longtime friend, who's just an elite player in A.J. Brown, right? So this notion that Purdy is just along for the ride is somewhat true, but for those of us that have watched every single snap, and I would imagine many people listening here have, he's the best passer they've had of the Kyle Shanahan era by a wide margin. Like, he's making passes. He made some passes in that game that, like, does Jimmy make this pass? Does Jimmy make this play? And some of it's with him keeping the plays alive. The difference to me of the two, though, is just Jalen at any time, when healthy, can run for 80 to 120 yards. Like, he is an elite runner of the football. Now, we'll see how it works against Fred and Greenlaw, which is much more difficult to do. But against the majority of the league, like, he can dominate you on the ground.
The other thing we don't know because of his injury is how willing is he to run post-injury. Didn't have to do it really much against the Giants. He got hurt against the Bears in a game in which he had 17 rush attempts. He had 7 games this year where he ran the ball 15 times or more. I'm talking scrambles and design runs. 7 games. Now, he missed, 2? Not counting the postseason? I think he played in 15.
He played the last game.
So
yeah, he missed the Cowboy game, missed the Washington game, and he played the Giants game.
So almost half of his regular season games, almost half, he had 15 or more rush attempts. That's a lot of attempts. In half of his games this year, he had 50 or more rushing yards. Not half, 7. He had 15 or more rushing yards. He has 14 rushing touchdowns. 14. I thought Dak was scary. I thought one of the good things for the Niners that the Cowboys didn't end up on the goal line a lot, because I think Dak with his legs, and we've seen it for a couple weeks now, is a threat in the goal line. Obviously, Jalen is a threat all over the field, but on the goal line with his legs. And to me, it's not about design runs with him. It's the opposite. It's about when he decides to run is when I think he's really scary. And the Niners really, what mobile quarterbacks have we seen this defense against this year? Mariota? I mean, Fields was week 1. Different. That wasn't the guy running for 175 yards.
And in the past, this guy's not as explosive speed-wise, but Kyler's given them trouble, right?
Yeah, and Russ has given them trouble.
Pre-wash Russ. You know one number that really stands out to me, guy? Oklahoma, 20 rushing touchdowns his 1 year there. These last 2 years rushing, like you said, 14 this year if you count the playoff game, 10 last year. I mean, this guy is – that's why I thought he'd be a running back. He is it just comes so natural to him. And when you watch him, he's not Kyler where he's hitting turbo. It's just more of like a Kyle Shanahan would like him in the zone scheme. He's got a great feel for space. Remember we talked about Trey's instincts in space?
Yeah.
This guy's the opposite. This guy was fucking born with a football in his hand. Dad's a coach, been playing against the Will Andersons for 3 years at Alabama. So the speed, he feels like he's moving at a different speed than you, even though the defenders sometimes run faster than him. He's completely unfazed. It's an elite trait of his, ball in the hands.
And they have a lot of guys to cover. So, like in an ideal world, you'd say, okay, Fred Warner just keeps an eye on him all day. But you got running backs out of the bat. You got Miles Sanders. You got Dallas Goedert. You got the 2 receivers you got to cover. There's just a lot that your linebackers who are good. Like, that's the one thing the Niners have, right? They got good linebackers, fast linebackers.
I'd say the best duo in the league.
Tacklers in space. You trust them. Fourth down and 6, and it's 1-on-1 to get a first down. You trust them to make a play.
Well, think about this guy. And this goes back to the Brock Jalen. Like, Jalen does benefit from having an arsenal of weapons. Because how many teams in the NFL, now with Tyreek now gone from the Chiefs, could roll out a better top 5 skill guys? Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, McCaffrey, Mitchell. I think the Eagles are the only team that you could even make the arguments better or at best, equal. There's no one else goes that deep. They got Devontae, AJ, Goddard, Miles Sanders, and they actually have other running backs too. But like that top 4 is fantastic.
Yeah, you wouldn't go Chase, Higgins, Mixon, P. Ryan.
That's pretty damn good though.
Boyd.
And look at that. Where are they?
The AFC Championship game.
So beside them, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a group.
That's a good question. That's a good one.
And if you factored in the quarterback, there isn't a group. The only one that could make the argument would be Burrow.
So here's the good thing Brock Purdy has, right, is he has the 49ers defense. And I think that what we're going to get in this game from him is going to be different from the Dallas game. Like, what is required of him is going to be different from the Dallas game because they held Dallas to 12 points, right? I don't think you're holding Philadelphia to 12 points. And here's the other thing. Philly is the number 1 offense in first half points in the NFL this year. The Niners love to be a 4-quarter game. Niners are a good second half scoring team, actually. Shanahan,
Eagles sneaky kind of sputter in the second half. Even against the Giants, they were not.
They are not. They do not rate as highly. No points per game. I think they might average something in the range of 10 points per game in the second half. Now, I would wonder. My one question with that is, do they have such big leads this year?
I think they've had some. Yeah,
that they just don't score as much in the second half. That's where that number. I was looking for yards per play by half, and I couldn't find it. But points per game by half, they're number 1. So this is not a game where you want to get down 2 scores at halftime with the Eagles getting the ball first in the second half. That's trouble. But all of that said, to me, what's different about this game from Brock's standpoint is I know this. Here's what I know. Kyle Shanahan will scheme open throws for Brock Purdy this week. And I know it for 2 reasons. One, he does it every week. Every week I've watched Kyle Shanahan, guys get open. Didn't happen as much against Dallas. 2, the Niners can really run the ball. Philly knows this. It's not Philly's strength. Philly will want to stop the run and dare the 49ers to, like, okay, let's see if Brock Purdy can outduel Jalen Hurts. And so there are going to be open throws in this game for Brock Purdy. They are going to happen. Your classic Emmanuel Sanders open down the middle of the field, and it's just a moment. That's the moment. Do you hit Juice open? Do you hit Jennings? Does Ayuk get free for the touchdown, or does he get caught? Those moments are going to happen. 3, 4 of them are going to happen. Does Brock make all 4 of those throws? Because I don't know if you can afford to miss one of them in this game.
I think one thing that's going to be key, I saw our guy Ted Nguyen tweeted it out. It was a red zone throw that Brock Purdy did, one of his classic 360s, go backwards, throw it away. He said Debo's wide open on a quick slant, but Aaron Banks got bull rushed and ran over. And that's the thing, like in this Eagles game, there are probably some of those plays that you just called, maybe half of them, the line is just going to, one of their offensive linemen could get smoked, and it ruins the play. So, I think you're less likely against elite defensive lines. If you're 4 or 5 scheme plays that just work, a couple of them are going to get scrapped because he's going to have to scramble right away. That happened a lot during Dallas, where it just felt like they had scheme-specific plays, like one of Kyle in the lab, a fake here, throwback, and then all of a sudden he's like, holy shit, that's going to happen against this defensive line. As you said last week, Cowboys were number 2 in pressures. This team was number 1. And this team, top to bottom, is even better. Speaking about like whether Omenahu's going to play or not, it wasn't that long ago. I was watching Eagles game. Josh Sweat carted off the field.
Looked like he broke. It was the last game of the year?
Second to last against the Saints. It was like, did he break his neck? Watching the Giants game, who's making plays? Sweat. He's back. So he's just like, look pretty normal to me. They got horses. The other thing, guy, we said all week, it's weird because I root for Dak. He seems like a fucking great guy. I want success. Like, he seems like a good type person you want to build the league around. But he's a pretty flawed player, and holy moly, he throws a lot of interceptions. Jalen just does. I mean, he only had 6 picks. And you watch him, I mean, against bad teams, he doesn't even put balls in harm's way. I think one thing that just watching a lot of, I mean, I follow the Eagles pretty closely. I think they've been very, very impressed with like his just command of the ball. Because I think last year the knock on him, one, he just wasn't a very confident thrower, and 2, like the balls were kind of throwing some pick sixes. He was kind of playing a Dak level game. Like, it was kind of feast or famine. Mm-hmm. It felt like this year was just a lot of feasting.
Yeah.
I mean, now granted, he didn't play, he played in 15 games. He only threw 6 picks. And you're right. They were blowing people, and then they would run it down their throat. So but he was, what the 49ers just encountered, you could argue the first 2 playoff games, I think this guy's on a different level.
Yeah, and I would say the Niners are largely on a different level than what they've faced. That is, I've said it a lot. Neither one of these teams was great last year, so they didn't get first place schedules. And so I think there's a fair criticism of both of them. Now, they did play in a division.
Did you see the rankings? They're 32nd, 31st.
In what, strength of schedule?
Yeah.
Now, I'll say this for Dallas. I mean, Philly, they played in a division where 3 of the 4 teams made it to divisional weekend. The Niners played in a division where 2 teams made it to the playoffs, and 2 teams were the 2 of the 3 worst teams in the conference.
And even the shittiest team went 8-1.
Football team.
Yeah. What would Cliff be in Thailand if he went 8-1 right now? Probably not.
No, McVay would never even flirted with TV.
Feels like he just wanted to fire everybody.
They are now like they were 1 pass rusher deeper, I think, probably. Because they're like a 5-man depth in terms of pass rush. Speaking of Philly, it's Hargrave, it's Hassan Reddick, number 7, who was freaking everywhere last week.
That guy's sweet, bro.
it's Cox, it's Fletcher Cox, Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham. Like that's those first three, Hargrave, Reddick, and Cox are like tier 1. Josh Sweat's freaking good, and then Brandon Graham.
You know what it feels like?
Are Bosa, Omenahu, Ebikam, Armstead. I would say that's their group.
You know, like when the Giants would play a dude that bashed and Bochy would like make his way over during batting practice and like put his arm around like a Bryce Harper type and just be like, I like what you're going. I could see Kasarik pregame warmups just kind of work his way over to their unit. And he's like, you guys are my type guys. If you guys ever need a home, here's my number. You give me a call.
The problem is both teams, their guys get more expensive after they play for them.
Yeah. Now, Hargraves, they paid a lot of money a couple years ago in free agency. Reddick, they broke off. I mean, one of the things they're doing because they have a quarterback in the second round, they have spent money on defensive linemen with the extra cap space. Those are two guys they bought the last 2 years. And they are, like the Niners this year with Mooney Ward, they have hit on two guys. And when you hit on premium positions, a corner, a defensive lineman, an offensive tackle, it feels fucking good because you feel them. And they've spent money on those two guys, and they have produced. Sweat they drafted, and they extended. He's good. Fletcher's, a little long in the tooth, him and Brandon Graham, but they are any good team. The Niners would take both those two guys in a heartbeat.
Don't forget Ndamukong's there. Not part of this conversation, just as an aside, like 15 snaps last week.
I saw that someone on Twitter said that the Eagles were 28th in the league against the run. And remember when the football team smoked them on Monday night and just ran it down their throat, and the next day they signed like multiple defensive tackles, and Jordan Davis comes back. I saw Josh Dubow replied to the tweet and said, since Sue has started playing with them by DVOA or by some ranking, they are actually middle of the pack this last month of the season. So they are not at one point in time, they were one of the worst rushing defenses in the league. Since they've gotten their guys back and added Sue, they've just been much more credible. They're not just some Seattle defense.
He's playing 25 snaps. So he's just runs
big body.
Last week, there was obviously it was a passing game for the Giants, so we didn't play as much.
I would imagine the game plan by Kyle Shanahan is going to be run it often, right?
Yeah.
Because they do have good defensive line. They also have good DBs. I mean, their DBs make plays. I mean, Darius Slay has been that's been like a Richard Sherman favorite for, honestly, I remember him tweeting at him since before he got to the Niners. He loved it because he very similar to Richard, right? Tall, long, playmaker, podcaster, just playmaker. He's a good player.